Warm greetings to everyone tuning in for this special Vesak celebration 2020. It's a special time not only to recollect the birth, the awakening and the parinibbana of the Buddha, but a special time in the world right now. The reason we're gathering together on the internet is obviously because of the pandemic that is affecting the world globally, and because of physical distancing measures. This is a time like no other, perhaps, to reflect deeply on the Buddha's message, the Buddha's teaching, and the message of his life. His awakening as a human being is something we can reflect on in terms of what is possible for a human life. The Buddha's path of awakening is always about harmlessness, about kindness, about compassion towards ourselves and towards other beings. And human beings, we have no shortage of suffering that we find ourselves in our lives from time to time, whether you're in a well-off existence in a first world developed country, or whether we find ourselves in poorer circumstances or more dire circumstances. The truth of suffering is present for us all to learn from. And the Buddha has taught on many occasions that he teaches not just on suffering, but on freedom from suffering, the fact of cessation from suffering. Suffering itself caused by ignorance, delusion, greed, hatred, delusion, is an impermanent state. And these states of greed, hatred, delusion are also impermanent conditioned states. They're not really who and what we are. And so his message is one of awakening, to snap out of these more destructive or unskillful states that lead to more suffering, more delusion, more hatred, more greed, to find a path, or to align with the path of generosity, of kindness, of compassion, of letting go, and to discover for ourselves where that leads. When we learn to let go, when we actually have an experience of letting go and non-clinging, we can find a space of peacefulness in the heart-mind, which is quite a surprise to us when it happens. And this we can find no matter what circumstances we find ourselves in. So this message of the Buddha is to look inwards, to use the very faculties of the human mind, of mindfulness, of attention, of stillness, of clarity, to really build these qualities until we see clearly the nature of the conditions of the mind, the nature of the suffering mechanisms of the mind, and to see that when we don't cling, when we don't identify with those, that there is the possibility, there is the reality of peace, of stillness, of wisdom to be found in letting go. And this letting go is not a non-response to the world. It is a way of being in the world that allows us to move and behave and live in the world more freely, more at ease, more compassionately, more kindly, with wisdom. No longer creating the causes for more suffering, but rather creating causes for peace, for happiness, for freedom. This is the deep message of the Buddha through his own path of awakening, through realizing the full extent of the nature of the conditioned world and the unconditioned reality. This is his message to us, that we have the capacity, that all beings have the capacity to awaken. And it just takes a little faith in that for us to take the step to be mindful, to reflect upon the causes of our experiences of happiness or peace, or of unhappiness, of unpeacefulness, to reflect upon the causes and to veer away as much as possible from those things that cause harm, cause harm to ourselves that we feel here, and cause harm to others. This is a way of training the mind. But most of us might think it's such a long way away before we realize this full awakening. But that's not true. It's not a true way to think. The more you walk on this path, you see the imminence of the reality that the Buddha is pointing to. That can be realized here and now, each wise person for themselves, or each person for themselves, with wisdom. So mindfulness and wisdom is not something we're bereft of, but it is something we can develop or neglect. The Buddha's encouragement was to develop that, and through this development we will find those very spiritual factors strengthening and coming to fruition in full clarity, full wisdom, full awakening. The way we walk along this path of the Buddha's practice is as important as the way we think about it. So the attitudes of kindness and compassion are foremost. We must develop this quality of kindness and compassion towards all of our experiences. Whatever we experience for ourselves, no matter how painful it might be, we need to come to a place where we consider how to be kind towards that, how to be compassionate with that. Until we can do this for ourselves, it will be very hard to do it in relation to others and in outer circumstances. But as I said earlier, just a little bit of practice in this way, mindfulness, kindness, compassion, brings us into a place of clarity, of peace and understanding. And this will guide us in our path, in our practice. So I encourage you all today to, when you reflect on what the Buddha, the Dharma and the Sangha means for you, to remember that the Buddha is pointing to the fact of the reality that we can awaken. Human beings can awaken out of suffering into a peaceful understanding of the way things are. We can see the way things are all around us if we look with right view to recognize the changing nature of all conditioned states. They're not who and what we are. It's only when we grasp at them and identify with them that suffering takes hold. This is what we learn over and over again when we inquire inward and when we reflect outwardly. When we understand this allows us to let go, to be more open, and to rest in that quality of peace in the heart, the Dhamma lying in the heart. And the quality of Sangha is to trust in that capacity that we all have, that goodness, to trust in goodness and trust in the capacity you have to awaken. So for me, this is what the message of the Buddha is about. And I can use that no matter what circumstance I find myself in, no matter how confused or fearful or anxious or averse, the worst case scenarios. I can always reflect in this way to find the peace within that. So I wish for all of you to remember your own wondrous qualities, to trust in your capacity to awaken, and to remember to engage those spiritual faculties from moment to moment to build that raft to the other shore, crossing the sea of samsara. I wish you all the blessings of the Triple Gem on this special day.